Good morning. It is chocolate orange time, and this is a sort of theme I didn't actually think of. It was a suggestion from one of my viewers, and this lady's in a craft group and they're wanting to do some yarn bombing ready for our Queen's Platinum Jubilee, which is 70 years. How amazing is that? 70 years. And this is the suggestion. She said, could I make a pattern? So of course I like a challenge, and here it is. It is a little crown, and of course chocolate orange inside. It is quite a simple pattern to follow. You don't have to have the fluffy bit on the end. That's entirely up to you. I just thought it gave a little bit more detail. So we're going to be making this little crown. I don't know how well you can actually see it there. I thoroughly enjoyed making it. There was a couple of versions before I got to this point, so a few alterations. I will show you one of the ones that I did alter, but I actually did like the yarn, but it wasn't a yarn that most people use, so I decided to sort of take it back to a double knit yarn. UK terms, don't forget that as well, so that everybody could have a go at making this crown. So we're going to go top down now to make our crown, and thank you again, Julie, for the suggestion. It's worked out perfectly. I'll see you in a moment. Here we are with the crown itself. Now, as I mentioned, this is done in a double knit yarn. I had done it in a different yarn, which I'll show you in a second, but then I was concerned that, well, not everybody might have that yarn, so I went back to the double knit yarn. So these are the yarns I have used. These are UK yarns. Now, I know I had a query. People asked about worsted weight compared with double knit yarn here. The worsted weight is thicker, so if you are using it, you may need to check your tension, keep trying it on your egg, things like that. But that can vary here. Well, you can buy one double knit yarn and another double knit yarn, and they can still be different. So it's always worth checking on your orange as you go. So this one's just this is a silvery colour with a little bit of a sparkle in it. Obviously, this is just a plain purple. And the other yarn I used was this eyelash yarn. Now, I don't like to crochet an eyelash. I think it is quite a hard yarn to do. But if you're only doing sort of maybe 1 round, 2 rounds, it's not bad, and it does create that little bit of extra sort of luxury to your crown. But of course, you don't have to use it. You could just go down and do it straight, or maybe if you've got a little bit of fur, you can add it afterwards. It doesn't have to be crocheted, just that I did. I have a few beads here because I just sewed a few beads on. I think maybe sequins would have worked quite well, but I'd already passed my sequins on to my granddaughter for her to do her Easter project for school, so I had no sequins. So I did use the beads, and I'm quite pleased with them. But I do think if you were using, beads could get expensive if you were making a lot of them, perhaps, or, it can add to a bit of the weight of it. There's lots of things you could use. You could cut out little felt shapes, you can stick things on. That part obviously is when it comes down to your creativity, and you can enjoy doing that bit. Now, as far as a crochet hook is concerned, I have a 3.5mm, again, UK hook there. I have this cute little stitch marker because I thought, well, that looked all sort of gems and sparkly, so I thought that was nice. And my needles and my scissors, of course. Now, the only thing is, I did mention that I did do one in a different yarn. Now, it looks a bit weird because it's not on the egg, because it's a bit... egg, it's not on an egg at all, is it? It's on a chocolate orange, so it's a bit squashed. Amazing how the chocolate orange usually keeps the shape. Now, this is the one I did. This was sort of like the prototype, so it's not even fully finished. And I used this lame yarn, which is beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. And this is what it is, if anybody's wanting to look for some. It is Rico Design, and it is a lame, but it is a double knit. Can you see that? Oh, that's a bit better, isn't it? So it's shining itself, even its lettering's shiny. And as I say, it is a double knit yarn. It's a 10-gram ball, but you do get quite a bit out of it. I picked this up in a sort of a sale in a shop, so I don't even 100% sure know whether they still do it. But it was nice, a bit rough on your hands, and I don't think it holds quite as well, because I know I needed to sort of stitch the edges down here a little bit to sort of give it a bit more shape. But I do think it certainly gives that sort of bling effect. And then this here, I know I've used the eyelash on this new one, but this is actually a fur. Now, I cannot remember where I got this from. This is the only thing. I've got a feeling it was Wool Warehouse in the UK here. And it is, can you see, it's like a little bit of fur on a tiny, tiny bit of fabric. And it crochets up really nice. I've used it for various, like a doll hat, sort of use that for the edging or things like that. Again, a little bit like this one. You don't want to be doing too many rows because you can't actually see your stitches because of the fluff. You can feel them, so with practice you can do it, but I wouldn't recommend a beginner did that. But look at the fluff it creates. It's gorgeous. It does make it look like you've edged whatever you've made. I did have somebody actually ask me about one of the doll hats, if it wouldn't check it was faux fur, not real fur. And I'm like, oh wow, it must look quite good then. So it is nice to use. I think it is classed as just a faux fur yarn, but I love using it. I think it really does make it quite glamorous. But again, not an easy yarn to use if you're a beginner. So it's an option. It's something to look at, or if you're wanting to do a couple. I know the lady who commented to ask if I could do this. They're doing it for a yarn bomb. They can't really be using that unless they happen to have it in the house, because it would get rather expensive using that as well. So again, I needed it to be yarns that everybody can use. And I think a double knit yarns, particularly here in the UK at least, it's something we've all got stashed somewhere. We can do any colour crown. I was tempted to go for the red, but when I did have a little look, I noticed purple is the main colour. So we're going to get on with this. First bit's easy peasy. Well, to be honest, it's all easy peasy, but it's just the sewing up perhaps. I'm going to take my orange out because we do need it to keep checking whether it's going to fit. So we're going to start with our purple. We'll move all those beads out of the way. I'm not actually going to sew any beads on with you. They were there just to show you. In fact, I'll show you a little bit more. Look, they're just a variety. Some are glass, some are plastic. I mean, if you can get some from somewhere like a pound shop or something like that, that's where my sequins had come from actually. That would probably be the best place. You don't want too much weight. Some of those are a bit heavy because they are glass. So I'll put them to one side. I have my pattern here. I have my hook. And where's my pen? I need a pen ready. So I've got a pen ready as well. So we're going to get going with the purple, or whatever colour you choose to do for the centre of your crown. So this is the fabricy bit that would be in the crown. It is an amigurumi style, but we are going to be using half trebles. Again, don't forget UK terms here. So we'll start with our slip knot. My voice sounds a bit funny. I'm still getting over a cold, so I do sound a bit odd. So I might have to stop at some point and have a drink as well. So we're going to start with 2 chain. And into this first chain, like I do with all my amigurumi, I am going to do 6 double crochets. It's just your starting point. So here we go. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Now we're going to move straight on to half trebles. We're not going to worry about slip stitch joining or anything like that, but we are going to have to count because it's going to be really hard to tell where you started. So it's going to be 2 half trebles into every single one of those double crochets. I'm just going to move that out of the way. It does affect the light a little bit if there's anything too far in front of me. So yarn round for a half treble into that first double crochet. First one's always a bit of a pain to get into. There we go. We're going to pull it through. I don't know why the first one's always tight. It must be something to do with mine. Yours might not be tight. It might be just the way I crochet. We have 3 on the hook now, and we're going to pull it through all 3. So yarn round into the same one again. Pull it through. We have 3 on the hook, which is what we want, and we pull it through all 3. So that's our first 2 half trebles. We now got 5 more sets to do, so off we go. So into our next one with 2 half trebles, 1 and 2, into number 3, 1 and 2, into number 4, 1 and 2, into number 5, 1 and 2, and finally into number 6, 1 and 2. So I'm just going to tighten up my original slip knot, and there's our first round of increases. I'm going to add my stitch marker here now because obviously as I'm talking I get distracted. I would recommend you do count rather than stitch mark if you have no distractions. I think it's gorgeous that. So it looked quite royal, I thought. Put just a little bit of sparkle on there. We're going to be increasing again. Now I'm just double checking what I've written there, and it's going to be once again same as I don't know why I even check, because this is quite often what I do. We're going to be doing 2 half trebles again into each of those 12 to give us 24 half trebles. So here we go. This is our first one. I will count as well, I think. So that's our first one with 2. Our second one with 2, number 3 with 2, number 4, all half trebles, remember, number 5, number 6. So we're halfway there now, so we've got 6 more to do with 2 half trebles in each one. So number 7, number 8, number 9, number 10, I've got 2 more to go, number 11, and our last one, number 12. So that was 2 in each of the 12. So we now have 24 stitches. So we do need a little bit of more of an increase after this next round, but to be honest, you're almost there. It might even be worth checking sort of your sizing. You can see roughly where that fits on the chocolate orange. In fact, if you turn it over, you know the circle part of the chocolate orange, look. It's about that point when I've got 24 stitches. So that might be just worth checking, just in case maybe your tension's a little bit looser. That's it, everybody's is different. We're going to do one round now that is just 1 half treble into each of those 24. So I'm not going to count, I'm just going to rely on my stitch marker now. So move my orange, move over there perhaps. And let's go round with just 1 half treble into every single one of the previous round's half trebles. So you'll see it starts to curl a little. That's okay, that's normal. We do eventually need it to curl around the orange anyway. We have 1 more round after this of increase, and then they'll all be straight rounds anyway. It's quite a simple shape. It's similar to some of the others. They're not all the same that I do, but you could use the same sort of base for each one. I do occasionally alter it, depending on what the design is that I'm going to be putting over it. Almost round. 2 more. 1 and 2. And I think I really do need to move that stitch marker up now, because it does, especially when the half trebles, the distance does alter quite a bit. So I just moved it up. So that's our round of just 1 half treble in each one. We do need 1 more increase round. We're going to increase by 6 stitches. We're going to do 2 stitches in our first one, and then a 1, a 1 and a 1. Yep, so it's 2 in 1 and then 3 individuals, and you're going to do that 6 times, so we get 6 increases. So this is our first one. So 2 in the very first stitch, and then 3 individual ones. 1, 2 and 3. That one caught a little bit there. So that is our first set. So we've got 5 more sets to do. So 2 in the first one, and 1 in each of the next 3. 1, 2 and 3. So that's our second set. Third set, 2 in the first one, and then 1 in each of the next 3. 1, 2 and 3. So that was set number 3. So 2 in our next one, 3 individuals, 1, 2 and 3. So that was set number 4. Number 5, 2 in the first one, and then we have a 1, a 2 and a 3. So we need 1 more set, which you can see because of the positioning of the stitch marker, you know you're okay. So here we go. So 2 in the first one, and then a 1, a 1 and a 1. Okay, so we're round. So if we grab our orange now, you can see roughly where we are. We're going to now be doing just 1 half treble into each stitch until we get to the bottom of the orange. Again, this could vary on your tension, so keep checking on your orange. Sort of check when you're about here perhaps, and then you can decide whether you're going to add a little bit on, or perhaps you don't need to. You might actually need to reduce around. Something I've just found out on the last thing I've made, I do have a tendency to go just beyond now a little bit, because if I'm sewing something on top of it, sometimes it pulls it up a little bit, so you need to make sure, because it's got fluff on the bottom, you sort of get away with that. But if it's something that's not got fluff, I do find sometimes if it's got like a head or something, I have a tendency to lift it. So that's something I'll show you towards the end, that I'm going to be making my next video. Hopefully I'm going to do it tomorrow, because I'm running, because I've had the cold, I'm running behind a little bit. So I wanted to get this one more Easter item out. I know we've only got a week, so you might not get used for Easter, but you never know, you might do a last minute present. So we're going to do 7 rounds. Well, I'm going to do 7 rounds. You may need to adjust what you want to do there. So stitch marker, I'm quite happy with it there. I'll leave it there for a couple of rounds, and off we go. 1 half treble into every single half treble, and you're going to do that all the way round, and you're going to do it 7 times. So we can speed up a little bit. I know some of you will sort of pause me now perhaps and do your 7 rounds, or if you are a beginner, it's sometimes best to pause and do that anyway and come back to me after a couple of rounds, something like that, because I'm not going to be doing anything different. I am not going to be increasing, decreasing, anything like that. I am just literally going to go round 7 times. See how it's curling up? We'll push that back out in a moment. It does have a tendency to curl the wrong way sometimes. Always be aware of what your sort of the right and wrong side is. Says me, I crocheted inside out for a long time. I was self-taught, so for quite a while I had nobody to tell me otherwise. I just thought I had an unusual texture to my crochet. Didn't look bad, but it wasn't right. Here we are, we're almost round on number 1. There we go, that's number 1, so I'm going to mark it now. Can you see how it's curling? We just push it round. There we go. I might move my stitch marker actually, because like I said, with the head half trebles, they sort of change quite quickly. If you ever want to check that out, just leave your stitch marker in and make sure you count each round. And after about sort of 5 or 6 rounds, just look, you'll find your stitch marker is not in line where you've done your count. This is why we must move it. It's because it's a spiral method rather than a stop-start. Now, I'm not so sure on the stop. No, the stop-start, it has to do that, doesn't it, when you slip stitch and that. So it would stay in line, but when you go in spiral, it doesn't. So round 2, off we go. Please pop a comment below if you're going to be doing the same sort of thing, making them for Jubilee gifts, or, I mean, it's just a cute crown. I mean, you can use it for anything, to be honest. But I know a lot of people sort of are looking for towards sort of the various Jubilee celebrations. I know it has already hit the 70 years for the Queen being the Queen, but obviously the coronation was later again, which would actually be next year. We'd be celebrating that part. But she has still been the Queen for 70 years. So there's various celebrations going off throughout the year. Perhaps you're doing a yarn bomb as well. If you live in the area of St Ives, where the lady who has requested this comes from, or if you're part of her crochet group, hello, let me know. Pop a little comment down, so let me know that if you are part of the group. It'd be lovely to see some photos. Don't forget you can tag me on Instagram for that. It's one thing you can't do, is it, on YouTube? You can't sort of pass photos across, but I suppose that's a good thing in some respects, because there are a few unscrupulous people and you might get perhaps some photos you don't want. So here we go. That was round 2. We are now on round 3. It grows quite quickly, this. There's not a huge amount to it. There's a few parts, whereas obviously for the centre post there's the 4, so obviously these 4. So that bit might take a little bit longer. I'm only going to make 1 with you today. You don't need to see me do all 4. And I'll discuss sort of the sewing up. And the band at the bottom is made separately to this part as well, because I thought that gives it a little bit more of a 3D. I had considered changing the colour part down, and I did try it, but it sat a bit flat. I think it needs sort of to have it as a separate layer, just makes it a little bit thicker. So we're almost round on round 3 already, so we're almost halfway. So when we get just past that halfway, check on your orange to make sure you're getting the right fit. It's really hard to work tension out for people. I know for the book that I'm doing, they've requested I do a tension section, which I will. I'll mention what my personal tension is, etc. But it's still hard. I know when I've had books and things, nightmare for making outfits for people, if that makes sense, because my tension, well, used to be a little bit tight. That's another round mark down. So if I was making a cardigan for the children or something like that, I always had to make it on the larger size because I was really bad with the tension that matched the other person's. It's almost impossible to get an exact. Although I'm pleased to say most people who have made the items that have tagged me, their stuff looks great. So, I mean, the tension must be there. I think I'm pretty average now. So when I first started, my work was very tight to a point where it would hurt my hands if I was crocheting for too long. And I think I've just learned to relax over the years. So it sort of relaxed my tension as well. I think as a beginner, you either go one way or the other. Either your work is very loose or it's extremely tight. And I say, you know, with sore hands when it's like that. But it does change. It's just about practice. The more you do, the more it'll balance out. I know I had one lady that I taught. We did a Christmas stocking the first sort of Christmas. I was doing some classes. And for some reason, hers came out at least 2 inches larger than everyone else's. It was as neat as a pin, but it was still a lot larger, and it was just down to the fact her tension was sort of really loose. She did one the following year because she did a comparison of it. She brought the other one in. The difference was amazing. You know, it had reduced in size, and obviously her technique had improved massively as well. So it just shows it does alter, so be careful with that. Right, that's another round. So we have 4 rounds now. We're on round 5 and we're doing well. Should we have a look what it looks like on our orange? I think so. That ta-da! Now you do need, I mean, if you just plug that on, you think, oh, it's not going to fit. You do need that little bit of tightness because it will stretch, especially if it's an acrylic yarn. It does stretch quite well. If you're using cotton yarns, they stretch less. But I think for most things like this, the acrylic or sort of similar type of yarn is about the best. And especially if you're making a lot of them, it's usually a cheaper yarn as well. Oh, look, split the yarn, undo it. So I'm on round 5, aren't I? I think perhaps I ought to move the stitch marker up when we get round. I suddenly had a thought that I weren't even in the camera then. I'm sort of looking to one side. I've got where the camera stood. My hand's like over here, but my head's like over here. And I was just looking across then, and I suddenly thought I weren't on camera, but I am. I hope I am. Yeah, my head's not quite in it at the moment, but I did want to get these patterns done as I did promise to do them. I'm a couple of days late as it is. And like I say, I wanted to get my other Easter, my last Easter project done as well. So we will get there. Couple more to go, and then that is round 5, and then there's only 2 more to go, depending obviously if you're wanting to add or subtract any rounds. And we can pause there to put that on. So that is 5 rounds now. I'm just going to pause for a second. I'm back. I just had to grab a tissue there, so I know you don't see the break, but obviously I see the difference, and sometimes it looks a bit weird as if I've cut it. Right, so we're going to put that stitch marker higher, and we have just 2 more rounds to go, and we've finished the base. Or is it a base? I suppose it is a base because it's the first layer on the orange, but it's not really the base as in the bottom, is it? Off we go. This is our final 2 rounds. And then we can start the pretty bits. almost there. I can feel the stitch marker under my fingers, that's why I can say that. And we have one more round to go. So there's 30 stitches round, so we should have just 30 stitches left to go. I will get the pattern written up as well today, because I did promise. I know I was asked for a pattern, not necessarily a YouTube channel. I'm not... Ah! Have I made you all dizzy there? Let me just pause. You got my hand there as well. Does it stop wobbling? It stopped wobbling. Right, what I was saying was, it was a pattern I was asked for, not a particular YouTube tutorial, but I just thought it was such a cool idea, I thought I'd do both. So there will be a pattern available on my website this afternoon. I do need to catch up on a few patterns, because I know there's a few I've promised I'd make for people, and I just haven't got around to doing them. But like I say, I've been doing some bits and bobs, but I've not really felt like doing a huge amount. So this is my final round. And I will try not to hit the camera again. Like I said, this sort of holder is brilliant, but I could do with it so it sort of comes this way, whereas it's coming over my shoulder. So that is why I catch it, but the arm isn't quite long enough. I'm sure there's a better system. I mean, this is great. I'm really pleased with it. I mean, it only cost, I think it was about, was it £8 on Amazon or something like that? It wasn't expensive. No, it might have been nearer 12. But yeah, I could do with it having a slightly longer arm. Right, almost at that stitch marker. So I'm going to make my last stitch a slip stitch. Just because it sort of flattens it off, because otherwise this side's going to be higher than that side. So my needles have stuck to my scissors like they always do. We don't need to worry about how long this is going to be, because we're going to be sewing the ends in. If you're going to be sewing something onto something, you need to make sure you've got a nice long end there. But if it's just sort of sewing away, getting rid of the ends, you don't need it to be long enough to get on your needle. But right, I'm going to be lazy, and I'm just going to shove those inside. Obviously you need to sew your ends in, and we'll squeeze it over our orange. So again, it does stretch, and it's surprising when you're using it, the amount of times you're manipulating it, it stretches as you're actually working on it as well. So you decide whether you want an extra round or you want one less. That is down to sort of your tension, as I've mentioned. So we have our cover. The next stage I'm going to do is we're going to get on with this band that goes all the way around at the bottom. So it will include our little bit of fluff as well. So we'll get rid of the purple, and we'll bring in this. Now I think this is a King Cole yarn, if I remember rightly. It's got this little tiny weeny sparkle in it. I just thought to make it a little bit more interesting. That's why I went with it. So we're going to be starting with a chain, and again, this is going to be a tension test for you. I did 40 chain on mine, but I did the chain and then measured it round, so it was quite a tight fit. I'll show you as I do my 40. You might find you want a few less or a few more, but don't overdo it, because you'd be surprised it stretches again as you go. So you need it to be a sort of a tight fit, which I will show you as I do it. So 40 chain, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12, this is a boring bit, 13 14 15 16 17 18 19 20, well, we're halfway, 21 22 23 24 25 26 27 28 29 30. I always sort of pause every 10. If I'm doing a really long line, I'll put a stitch marker sort of every 10 or 20 as well, because then if I lose count, I can go back to that point. So I know that's 30, because that's when I stopped. 1 2 3 4 5 6. Oh, nearly 6. Nearly split the yarn. 7 8 9 and 10. So it needs to go all the way round. So if you look, I'm not pulling it tight at this point. If I didn't pull it tight, it looks like there's quite a gap there, so you'd be a bit worried. But look how easy it stretches. So you'd need it. So if it was very loose and you just drop it round, you need that gap. So you've got a gap there, yeah? And then when it pulls to, it will be tighter. So that is why I've done that. Now, I do want it to sort of be in the round, but it's sometimes a bit hard to join a chain without twisting it. So I'm actually going to do my first one as a row. You can always sew that tiny little bit up afterwards, and if it makes it easier, that's always better. So we're just going to do one double crochet. Remember UK terms, so it's a double all the way along those 40 stitches. Again, this is a slightly boring bit for you, I'm afraid. So if you're wanting to pause me and do your 40 stitches and come back to me after that, I will see you in a second. If not, let's get going. We've already done about 10, haven't we? About 10, do you think? So we're a quarter of the way there. It's just that first round or row or whatever you're doing, that first foundation row around is just, it's always boring. I hate doing that bit. I always said I don't feel like I'm crocheting until I get past that foundation round. Oh, we're about halfway now. It's quite a nice yarn, this, as much as it's got a sparkle in it, which can sometimes be a bit rough on your fingers. It's quite soft, this one. I thought it was an unusual colour when I saw it to be grey. I've got it in whites and sort of brighter colours, sort of Christmassy type colours. But I saw this one, and again, it was one that was in a sale in a shop. And I'm like, well, that's really unusual. So it's just, I think you would class it as a grey. So I suppose it's heading towards a silver. So, oh, it's going to get in the way, isn't it? Go over there. So we're almost there. We're on our last quarter. You know, I swear I tempt fate when I say, whoa, we're almost there, and then something goes wrong, or I drop a stitch, or I split a stitch, or something like that. Last couple. Last one. Right, so we have our row of 40. So I'm just going to lay it out like that. So that's the wrong side that's facing me. And what I'm wanting to do is join it all into a circle now. So it's about keeping it flat. You need to make sure it's going to be flat. We can't twist it, okay? And we're going to pick up the very first stitch there. And we're going to just do a slip stitch into place. So yeah, there is that little gap there, but when you're sewing it all on, that will go anyway. I am going to start with one chain, just makes it a little bit easier, but we can use this as the equivalent to our stitch marker. And we are going to be doing half treble rounds now, and we're going to just be doing 2 of them before we start the fluff. Depends whether you're adding the fluff. Now I said I did 1 chain there because I'm doing half trebles. I need 2, don't I? There we go. And we're going to do 1 half treble into every single one of these stitches. So remember, you pull through all 3 for your half trebles. And we're doing 2 rounds. Love half trebles for that. My favourite stitch is a double crochet, I have to admit. It is neater, and I think it holds its shape better. You can manipulate its shape better. But if you're wanting something like a band or something like this, where you're wanting it to grow a little bit faster, especially if you are doing a lot of them, the half treble comes in nicely. Bits of cotton here, that's probably from sewing on the beads, because I'd sewed everyone on individually, so I was cutting bits of thread all the time. But yeah, so a half treble just helps it grow a bit quicker, but it still has the stability. If you went on to a treble, I think you'll lose the stability of the stitch a little bit, but trebles then are important for other areas. Look how quickly that's growing. We've already got a band there, haven't we? This is why I say we only need 2 rounds before we do the fluff. Love or hate that eyelash, it does create a lovely effect. It's just difficult to crochet with, that's all. Nearly lost that stitch. Back in we go. Oh, maybe not. There we go. Now we're in. Now we're in. Off we go for this final little bit before we do our last round. It's quite a quick project, I think. Sewing up takes a bit because you've got to sort of be messing about with the centre points and things like that. But the actual crochet side of it is quite quick. Keep an eye on your right and wrong side as well, because can you see how it's twisting that way? Well, that'd be the wrong side. I need it back out that way. Last few stitches of this round. Again, did you notice what I said? I said, oh, last few, and what happens? It goes wrong. My brain has to stop preempting what is going to be going next. That is my last stitch. Now, because I've done it like this, I am going to have to slip stitch join. I know, like I say, on this, I carried on spiral, but I think because it's the sort of band it is, we can't get away with it. So, 2 chain, and off we go. This is our last round if you're adding the fluff. There is actually only 1 round of fluff, so you know, you could maybe just do another round of this, or you could just do a double crochet round. That's when you need to measure it onto your why was I going to say candle? I'm telling you, this cold has absolutely addled my brain. All I wanted to do is sleep for the past week. Here we go. It's not a candle at all, is it? Although a round candle could make a nice gift inside one of these. So we have mentioned it doesn't have to be a chocolate gift, does it? Especially if the person you're making it for doesn't like chocolate or can't eat chocolate. There are round candles, I have seen them. So yes, a candle could be an idea. Oh, there we go. Again, it keeps turning itself inside out, so just keep pushing it out so it makes it a little bit easier to hold. I don't know how much, or whether you can even see a sparkle. I mean, because I'm looking at it now, I can see there's quite a pretty sparkle in it. It's more of an aurora borealis, I think they call it, so it has a slight pink hue to it as well, rather than a silver sparkle, but it's very pretty. When I watch the video back, I'll be able to see how much you can or can't see of the sparkle. Almost there. What we got? One more stitch, isn't it? One more stitch. It's always a bit hard to tell when you get round because that sort of leans that way, so it makes you think there's a bigger gap than there is. If you're unsure, just sort of stretch it out a little bit. No, I'd say we are there. You don't want to miss a stitch, but you don't want to sort of be adding stitches as well. So I've done a slip stitch and I'm just going to trim this off. That will be a piece that's going to be, oh, let me think. Am I going to be able to sew that on? Yeah, that should be long enough, because really you need to leave it long enough so you can stitch it on this time, like I mentioned before. So I'm just going to fasten it off though. I don't want it coming undone, because this is where you're going to have to decide what you're doing, whether you're fluffing it or not fluffing it. So as you can see, if I put the band on, it's quite a nice width. You could just do the crown parts from there. Entirely up to you. I am actually going to add on the extra. It will take the band up to about there when I add on this extra. So let's get the fluffy bits in. and I'm going to do half trebles again. I fastened off because it's a totally different yarn, so I thought it'd be easier just to start it separate. So we're going to go into that stitch there. Remember, you need to sew these bits in. They're nightmare to sew in as well. So we're going to do 2, 1, 2. That's our first half treble. I'm going to try and line that up actually and sort of crochet it in as I go. You don't have to though. So still the same, yarn round. This gets in the way, I know. Into the stitch, pull it through. You can see just there's 3 there, and pull it through. If you're not used to this yarn, take your time, because it is so easy to miss a stitch, drop a stitch, and when you do, it's not so easy to take it apart. It takes a lot of patience to start picking at it. So I am doing half trebles. I know they're not very easy to see, but if you don't want to do the fluffy section, obviously don't, or add a bit of fur on at the end, or a bit of felt, or something like that, just to make it a bit more interesting. I thought I'd let you see how, love or hate, it works. It caught slightly there. It's because of, obviously, there's all these extra strands, and if they catch into your stitch, it makes your stitch a little bit difficult to work on. I personally would persevere with it because I do think it makes a difference, but it can be just a bit of a pain. Some gorgeous eyelash yarns out there as well. Some of the colours. I do have a box of yarn that is just the eyelash from when I used to knit rather than crochet. I mean, God, that's been a long time now. But I kept it just because I thought they were so beautiful. You know, I'd made teddy bears and things like that with it. But then I found it didn't translate across to doing crochet. But I did keep them because it does make nice edging on the crochet, and it's been great for a few of the doll accessories and things like that. So that's why I do have a selection of eyelash yarns as well. But we're about halfway though, it's not doing too bad. Right, I am going to trim that one. See that one? That's the one I was sort of crocheting in as I went. That's just optional, but I'm just going to get rid of it. It's one less thing to have to be having a fight with. Put it over there. Can you see the effect it creates? I think it is worth it, isn't it? If you have got some, I would have a go and just be patient with that last round. They are half trebles, don't forget. You could just do a double crochet round, which is a little bit easier to see. But can you imagine if you had to do another round? In fact, we'll have a look at it, even though I'm not going to do it. I'll show you sort of how it's almost impossible. It's not impossible, but you have to sort of feel for your stitches rather than actually see them. So you have to rely on sort of the feeling of your work rather than your vision. But we are nearly there. Look, nearly back to that stitch marker. Well, that yarn end. Very quick way of doing a doll feather boa this as well. That's what I did for my little Charleston doll that I did. I just did sort of chain of this really, and then double crochet row if you wanted to. One more. There we go. So I'm round now. Can you see? I can barely even see where my 3 chain is, so I'm having to feel for this and then double check it's, if you pull it like that, you know it's in, and yarn through. But yeah, can you imagine trying to then see, if I pull it apart, you can see the chain, you see where the chain is, but that is really difficult to see when you crochet. That's why I've only done 1 round on this. I don't want you to be put off if you've never done it. I think you should try it, but I don't want you sort of then go, oh, I just can't see it, because it does look quite pretty, doesn't it? So these ends, sew in any that you know you're not going to need. So we could get rid of this one, but the others you do need to remember you're sewing it onto this, so leave some nice long ends. So we're just going to push this over for now. Can you see? I think that makes a nice difference. When you are sewing them on, try and make sure you get the same line. Can you see that sort of like drops there? Just move it up a little bit, make sure it's in position, be happy that it's equal all the way around. Look, it drops there a bit, so I'll need to pull that up just like that. And I stitched along all the way around. I didn't actually stitch any other part on, I only stitched the top bit on, and I found that was enough. You may want to stitch a little bit more, that's entirely up to you. So I'm not going to stitch the ends in because we're going to move on to our next bit. So we need our silvery glittery thing, and it's these sections here. So obviously we need 4. After doing the fluff, this is an absolute doddle, we're going to do 6 chain, 5 of those of which are going to be the stitches, 1 is a turning chain. So I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they'd be the stitches, and number 6 is our turning chain. From there we're going to be doing 15 rows, just backwards and forwards for 15 times. So I'm going to go into that first one. Now there's 5 stitches, remember that was for turning, so I've got 1 double crochet, 2 double crochet, 3, 4 and 5, which is what I need. And just tighten up that original knot there. So that is my row 1. Definitely need a pen for this. You need to make sure all 4 are exactly the same. I'm going to do a chain because I like to chain before I turn, then I'm going to turn, and then I'm going to do 5 stitches. Now your first stitch is directly below that chain, don't forget that, otherwise you'll be decreasing. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, even though that last one's always a little difficult to see, and mark it down. And 1, oh, nearly spun off me. Span, is that a word? Spun off. Right, 1 chain and turn, and 5 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. That was number 3. Goes quite quickly, this bit actually. 1 chain and turn. If you don't want to do your chain before you turn, you don't have to. It's just I find it easier to chain and then turn. It's just a personal preference. Most patterns will tell you, you finish that row, then on the next row it'll say chain and then carry on. So that was 4. Chain and turn. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It is worth counting because you need to make sure. It is so easy to drop a stitch at the end. So make sure you've got the right amount. So 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. That's our 6. 1 chain and turn. Rounds, that's because I've been doing rounds. Row 7, should I say. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Row 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chain and turn. Row 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chain and turn. This is our 10th row, so you can see how it's nicely coming along now. Looks like we're making a miniature scarf. 4 and 5, so that is 10 now. Chain and turn. So we're almost there because we need 15, remember. So we're on 11 now. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Chain, turn. Row 12. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Chain, turn. Row 13. We're nearly there. 2, 3, 4, 5. Chain and turn. Let me get some of that yarn out. It's getting a bit tight on the ball there. So turn it round. This is row 14. And chain and turn. Our last row of 5. we do have a bit of decreasing to do. And 5. So that is it for the actual length, but I wanted to sort of point it in a little bit at the top so it didn't make it too bulky. So I'm going to do that chain again and turn, but this time we're going to miss that first stitch. So we're not going to do this one, we're going to jump into the second one, which means we'll be doing 4 stitches. So we have 1, 2, 3 and 4, chain and turn, and we're going to do the same again. We're going to miss the first one, so we're missing this one here, jump into the next one, and this time we should only be doing 3. 1, 2, because we're missing one every time, and 3, chain and turn, miss the first stitch. This time we've only got 2 stitches, 1 and 2, chain and turn, and we have our last stitch. Ta-da! So you've got that little bit of shaping there. So let's trim and fasten off. Again, I've left a little bit of length because I need to stitch that onto the center point, and I need to stitch this onto the base here. Now, again, I'm not going to stitch this on now, so we will be stitching that to the center point, but I will comment, you know, when I stitched this onto here, so this bit's going to go onto here, I have stitched slightly up each side. So if you have a look on here, can you see? So I've attached up the side a little bit because I think it gives it a better shape. It sort of flattens it and then it allows it to sort of stick out. It supports it a little bit better. So we need 4 of those. So I'm going to leave you to do your 4, and we're going to now do just this little bit in the middle. Now, if you've got a nice big bead, you could use that. You don't have to crochet this. You could do it all different ways. But I thought, well, obviously the whole point is a crochet challenge, so we'll do the whole thing in crochet. It's just a little amigurumi ball. That's all it is. So we start with our slip knot onto our hook, and you've guessed it, we're going to do 2 chain and 6 double crochets into our first chain. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. We're now going to do our 2 double crochets into each of those 6, giving us our 12. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. So you've now got 12 stitches, which is enough of an increase for this particular sort of bauble on the top of the crown. We're going to do 3 rounds of just 1 double crochet in each. Not going to bother with the stitch marker for that. We only have 12 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12. That's our round 1, and it's already curling, so push it out in the other direction. Round 2, we'll pull a bit more of that yarn out. Round 2, so that was our first stitch there. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, got it twisted. Take it out. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12. So we've got a little mini hat there. We need another round. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12. So that is our final round. We need a little bit of decreasing now, and also a little bit of stuffing, which is something I haven't got, so I might do some cheaty stuffing and just pinch some of this and put it in. Sometimes you can use, you know, say if you have got leftover yarn, as long as it's the same colour, if it's a small area, use it for the stuffing, because apart from that, it means you're not throwing the bits of yarn away, and it saves on your stuffing as well. So we're going to do 2 together, 2 together, 2 together until almost closed, but we need to put the stuffing in first. So here we go, 2 together. So it goes in and we pull it out as if we're going to do a double crochet, but we don't finish it. We go into the next one, we do the same again. We end up with 3, we pull through all 3. That that's a decrease. Push it in, pull it out. Next one, same again, through all three, tighten it up. Tighten. I always tighten because it eliminates holes, because you can get little holes if you're not careful on this. So I think one more before we start thinking about popping any stuffing in there. Can you see my hole is closing up quite quickly now? You don't want it going too much. So I'm going to make sure that that's nice and tight, because I don't want that coming undone after. And then I'm just going to push this inside. My stuffing is sort of in front of me, but it's the other side of the room. And I don't think we need to worry too much. To be honest, just that little bit. Let's shove that in as well. Let's shove all the bits of yarn in. Should we pinch some of that? I'm going to pinch some of the eyelash to use as a bit of stuffing. Let me just wind it around my finger a little bit. It's alright, when I did that then, I thought, I wonder if it would work with pom-poms, whether it would work more pom-pom maker, the eyelash. That'd be a real fluffy pom-pom, wouldn't it? So, as you can see, it's just giving it enough stuffing for us to finish off. So, we're going to carry on 2 togethers until it is now 90% closed, because it's almost impossible to get 100% closed. There'll always be a tiny weeny gap. But you can sew that gap in, but when it's going on like it is, it would sew in anyway. So we have one more time, if we can get one. It's a bit of a squeeze, and I've done it. There we go, quite pleased with that. So again, we need enough yarn here to actually sew it onto our crown. There. So I can put all my yarn away, so I'm moving that to one side, and we're going to have a look at what we actually have. Now you have 2 options here. You definitely would sew the base on, I think, first. I've then actually used these tiny black beads to sort of give a little line around. It's normally on the fur, isn't it? Because it's an ermine or something like that. But I did actually sew the little black ones on this part just to give that effect. So that would be sewn on. Now, as far as the other beads are concerned, I don't know whether it's easier for you to sew the beads on first. Possibly. It is a little fiddly to get in as you're doing it when it's sewn on. So this is going to come down to your choice. If you wish to sew your beads on first, it might be easier. So when we have 4 of these, we'll sew our first one on. And then, well, I will if I find my needles. They're here. They are here. So I'm going to get my centre point first, because these do need to be equal. Very easy not to, as I've just found out when I've just sewn a bunny tail on one of my other items. Thought it was central, and it's not. It's very easy to lose your point. So I'm going to go for the centre there. Remember, the balls go in there, so this isn't the end of the world, this one, if it's not quite right. So you only need a couple of stitches, and I'm going to tighten that off. For me personally, I then pushed it through, and I did all my sewing in, etc. on the inside. But as you can see, I've got lots of ends I need to see to now. So that would hold it in the centre point. Make sure it's back on your orange, centre of the orange as well. And then you can see, obviously, you think, oh, that's too long. Well, it's meant to be, isn't it? So if we lined it up, you can see you need this bit here. Now, I've not sewn my base on, so this is going to be a little bit awkward to do. But sew your base on first. And we're just going to pick it up and stitch along. You see how it's sort of stitching, it's just joining, so you can barely tell that it's been made separate by the time you've done, just like that. I'm going to go slightly up one side, just by maybe 3 stitches. So that's 1, 2, and 3. Make sure you're really picking up a piece of this. Don't sort of just think you're picking it up and you haven't. And then I'm actually going to just thread it through. So I've threaded it through, because then I don't have to restart another piece of yarn. And then back down the other side with 3 stitches, or not, because it's just come off my needle. 1, 2 and 3, and then I would just fasten off as normal and sew in my loose ends. But as I mentioned, can you see by sewing that bottom bit up, it like holds it there better? Whereas if you left that loose to there, it does move. If I'd sewn the bottom on, it would have really held, wouldn't it, demonstrating that. So I'm just going to push that to one side. The ball is then stitched onto the centre. After you've done all 4 of these, so you stitched into the middle, you would stitch the ball on. And again, can you see I've just sewn it in there, pushed it through. So that is basically it for our crown. Obviously you need to do a couple more pieces because we need 4 of these, and you need to get going with those detailing. That is entirely up to you. Let's say felt, beads, sequins. I'm trying to think of other things. What buttons? Buttons would look quite cute, wouldn't they? So however you're wanting to actually dress your crown. In fact, let's pinch that one off my orange because it does look better when it's on the orange, doesn't it? Let's squeeze it on. And there we go. There is our little coronation crown that I hope you're going to enjoy. I hope there's going to be some great yarn bombing with it. I hope there's going to be some gifts. I'm just going to grab what I'm planning on doing next because I said I would show you. Try not to touch the table because I'll knock it. It's my little Easter. In fact, I didn't even have to reach up as high as I did because I've already moved him. So, ta-da! What do you think? My little Easter bunny gnome. It is a chocolate orange cover. You can see how I did his pom-pom and I've done it in the wrong place. What do you think? We're going to do that next. I'm going to have a little break. I'm going to have a drink and I'm going to take some paracetamol before I get on to the next bit. And we're going to have a go at this little fella. I'm really pleased with this one. I have to get it out today. We only have, not including today, because it's a week today, is Easter Sunday here. So we need to get the last piece of Easter gifting done in the next couple of days. So I will see you in a few moments with this one as well. They will be uploaded roughly at the same time. But it's the crown for this video and we will see you all very soon. If you do enjoy my videos, please like, subscribe and share. My brain does function a little bit better when I've not got a cold, and I'll see you all very soon. Bye bye for now.